Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel Quick Literature Guide. I am your friendly guide on this journey through the captivating history of English literature. In this video, we are diving deep into the captivating universe of Geoffrey Chaucer. We'll uncover his life story, explore his literary creations, and see how he shaped English literature for generations to come. At the end of this video, I have included all the important points to remember related to Chaucer's life and works. So, for a clear and better understanding, do not skip the video and watch till the end. So, let's get started. Geoffrey Chaucer was an important English writer who lived in the 14th century. His exact date of birth is unknown. Generally, it is said that he was born somewhere in 1340s, but 1342 or 43 is a closer guess. So either of the years is correct. So we can say that he was born around the year 1343 in London, England. Chaucer's father was a wine merchant and Chaucer himself worked as a civil servant and diplomat. Chaucer is known as the father of English literature. You know why? It is because he made significant contributions to the development of English language and literature. He wrote in Middle English, which was the English language spoken during his time. Because of this, Thomas Hawkliffe hailed Chaucer the founder of our fair language, whereas John Lydgate called him Lodestar of our language. A lodestar is a star that is used to guide the course of a ship. So writers like Hawkliffe and Lydgate saw him as the founder and guide of their language, the language which is later developed to modern English. Chaucer's writing style was influenced by French and Italian literature, as he admired the works of French troubadours and Italian poets like Dante and Petrarch. He often used satire and humor in his writings, and he had a keen eye for observing human nature and society, as we see in his most notable work, the Canterbury Tales. Chaucer lived through the reigns of three kings, Edward III, Richard II, and Henry IV, and held various positions in the royal court throughout his life. This allowed him to travel and gain exposure to different cultures and ideas. He was also involved in diplomatic missions, which gave him a broader perspective on international affairs. You could remember the names of these three kings along with their line easily by putting it like this. You write H at the bottom, then E at the top, R in the middle. Then put numbers in the same sequence as 4, 3 and 2. So it's her, H-E-R, her, 4, 3, 2. I remembered it like this because I always got confused with numbers and the names as well as who was the first in line. So I tried this and I don't get confused anymore. You may also try it. Finally, this old man, Chaucer, died in 1400. He was the first poet to be buried in Poets' Corner, Westminster Abbey. As you can see on the picture, after the discussion on his life, let us discuss Chaucer's literary career. Geoffrey Chaucer's literary career can be divided into three distinct phases, each marked by different styles, themes, and influences. These phases are often referred to as the French, Italian, and English phases. Let's explore each phase in more detail. The first phase is the French phase. Chaucer's early work were heavily influenced by French literature, particularly the courtly love tradition and the romantic poetry of the French troubadours. What is troubadour? A French medieval lyric poet, composing and singing in Provençal in the 11th to 13th century, especially on the theme of courtly love. During this phase, Chaucer imitated and adapted French models, often writing in French verse forms. Key works from this phase include The Book of the Duchess and The Parliament of Fowls. The Book of the Duchess is written in the style of a dream vision. This elegiac poem mourns the death of Blanche, Duchess of Lancaster. It was written on the death of Chaucer's friend John the Gaunt's wife. It exhibits courtly love conventions and features allegorical elements. The Parliament of Fowls is a beast fable set on Valentine's Day and portrays a dream vision in which birds come and debate on art and love and choose their mates. It combines elements of courtly love, with satirical social commentary. At this point, we must remember that it was written to celebrate the marriage of Richard II. The second phase is called the Italian phase. Why it is called Italian phase? Because in the second phase of his writing, he turned to Italian literature for his inspiration, particularly to the works of Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio. Chaucer was greatly influenced by the humanistic and realistic tendencies of Italian literature. The key works from this phase include Troilus and Cressida and the House of Fame. Troilus and Cressida is a narrative poem which is based on the story of Troilus and Cressida from classical sources. It explores themes of love, betrayal, and fate. Chaucer's use of the rhyme royal stanza and his psychological insight into the characters demonstrate the influence of Italian models. Another important work of this phase is the House of Fame. The House of Fame is inspired by Dante's Divine Comedy and Petrarch's Triumphs. This poem takes the form of a dream vision in which the narrator visits the House of Fame. It delves into the themes of fame, reputation, and the nature of truth. The third phase, or the final phase of Chaucer's writing, is the English phase. In this phase, he began to write in English, specifically Middle English, which was the vernacular language of the time. This phase marks a significant departure from the influence of French and Italian literature, as Chaucer embraced the English language and drew on a broader range of sources and themes. Notable works from this phase include the Canterbury Tales and the Legend of Good Women. Chaucer's magnum opus, the Canterbury Tales, is a collection of 24 stories framed within a pilgrimage to visit the shrine of Saint Thomas Becket in the Canterbury Cathedral. Each pilgrim tells a tale, providing a diverse and vivid portrayal of medieval English society. The tales encompass a wide range of genres, including romance, fabulous, and moral allegory. This work remained unfinished because Chaucer intended to write 124 stories, but he could complete only 24 stories and died before he could complete it. Another important work is The Legend of Good Women. This unfinished work explores the lives and stories of various virtuous women from classical mythology and history. It showcases Chaucer's interest in female characters and their roles in society. These three phases of Chaucer's life demonstrate his versatility as a writer and his ability to adapt to different literary traditions. While he began by emulating French poetry, he later turned to the realism of Italian literature and finally embraced the English language, creating a body of work that remains influential in English literature to this day. Now let us discuss an important topic: Geoffrey Chaucer as the earliest of the moderns. I am discussing this topic because I have found students facing difficulty in tracing out the answer for this question, and they sometimes get confused that how Chaucer, who belonged to the 14th century, could be the earliest of the moderns who belonged to the 20th century and afterwards. So I have tried to point out the elements of modern writing present in the works of Chaucer, due to which he is called as the earliest of the moderns. So let's find out what are they. Geoffrey Chaucer is often called the earliest of the moderns because his writings signaled a departure from the literary traditions that came before him, and they showcased elements that would later be recognized as characteristic of modern literature. One reason for this designation is Chaucer's use of vernacular language. First reason is his use of vernacular language. In his time, Latin and French were commonly employed in literature, but Chaucer chose to write in Middle English, the language spoken by ordinary people. This decision helped establish English as a legitimate medium for literary expression, and it set the stage for English to become the dominant language in literature. Chaucer's works also demonstrated a heightened sense of realism and individuality. So, the second point is his sense of realism and individuality. In the Canterbury Tales, for instance, he presented a diverse array of characters from different social classes and backgrounds. Each character had their own distinct personality, motivations, and flaws. This emphasis on the individual and the complex nature of human behavior foreshadowed the modern focus on individualism and psychological depth in literature. Furthermore, Chaucer's writings reflected a growing humanistic outlook. He explored human emotions, desires, and follies with a nuanced understanding, moving away from purely religious or allegorical themes. So, the third point is his humanistic outlook. For example, in The Miller's Tale from the Canterbury Tales, Chaucer satirizes human desire and deceit in a bawdy and humorous manner. This humanistic perspective aligned with the emerging ideas of the Renaissance, which placed greater emphasis on human potential and worth. Chaucer's works also displayed narrative complexity and irony. So the fourth point is narrative complexity and irony. In the Canterbury Tales, he employed intricate narrative structures such as the framing device of the pilgrimage, where each pilgrim tells a tale. This multi-layer storytelling technique allowed for a range of voices, perspectives, and genres within a single work. Chaucer used irony and social satire to critique and expose the vices and follies of his contemporary society. For instance, in The Pardoner's Tale, he uses irony to criticize the corruption within the church and the manipulative tactics of the pardoners. Finally, Chaucer was unafraid to experiment with literary forms and genres. He blended elements of romance, comedy, tragedy, and moral allegory in his works. For instance, Troilus and Cresside combines elements of a tragic love story with philosophical musings on fate and free will. This willingness to push the boundaries of traditional literary forms and styles, along with his linguistic inventiveness, contributed to his reputation as an innovator and precursor to modern literary experimentation. After discussing all these points, we may say that Chaucer's decision to write in English, his focus on individualism and realism, his humanistic outlook, his narrative complexity and irony, and his experimentation with literary forms all contributed to his designation as the earliest of the moderns. Through his works such as The Canterbury Tales and Troilus and Cressida, Chaucer laid the groundwork for future literary movements and established himself as a pioneer of modern literary sensibilities. So let's have a quick look on the important points to remember. Chaucer was born around the year 1343 in London, England. Thomas Hockley hailed Chaucer the founder of our fair language, whereas John Lydgate called him Lord Steer of our language. He was known as the father of English literature. He lived through the reigns of three kings, Edward III, Richard II, and Henry IV. Chaucer died in 1400s. He was the first poet to be buried in the Poets' Corner, Westminster Abbey. Chaucer used East Midland dialect from which modern English emerged. Chaucer used rhyme royale into English poems. Roman de la Rose was translated by Chaucer into Middle English. Book of Duchess is Chaucer's first original poem. His important works include Book of Duchess, also known as Death of Blanche, House of Fame, Parliament of Fowls, Troilus and Cresside, The Legend of Good Women, and the most important, The Canterbury Tales. And finally, we must remember the points why he was called the earliest of the moderns. Because his writing signaled a departure from literary traditions. He wrote in Middle English, establishing it as a legitimate literary language, emphasized individualism, psychological depth, and realism. His works displayed narrative complexity, irony, and social satire. And the last point, he experimented with literary forms and genres. This much for today's video. I hope the content is helpful for you. If you like the video, then hit the like button, share it among your friends, and if you are new to this channel, subscribe to it for more informative videos to come. Till then, keep learning, keep sharing. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening.